Hi, my name's Kevin Hicks. Welcome to the History Squad. Now, today's video is all about the final battle of the 100 Years' War. The English and French, you see, have been fighting out for actually over 100 years, and the English have defied some incredible odds such as the Battle of Castillon, Poitiers, and Agincourt. So when the aging English hero John Talbot, the Earl of Shrewsbury, faced a French army 1453, no one expected disaster. So let's see how this all plays out. The final battle, the Battle of Castillon. So with the loss of Normandy in 1450, the English had no holdings in France, apart from the port of Calais to the north. But in the southwest of France, Gascony remained fiercely pro-English, both culturally and economically. You see, for 300 years, they've been part of the English. No French soldier has stepped foot in Bordeaux for those 300 years. And in fact, Bordeaux itself was extremely pro-English. It had the wine trade, and I must admit I do enjoy a nice bottle of Bordeaux. And many locals were concerned that the French were going to invade Gascony and yearned for the return of the English. But politically, England was unstable. King Henry VI was weak, and it was seen as a failure for the loss of the lands in France. But to cut a long story short, England was exhausted by the wars in France. It had taken its toll financially and, of course, emotionally. France, meanwhile, under Charles VII's reforms, had gone from strength to strength, and they had, or should I say, the King of France, had eyes on Gascony. And there were a few English troops in Gascony, men who'd married local French ladies and made their homes, their lives in France. But as far as the army in Gascony was concerned, it was not very strong. So the French march into Gascony, little resistance. They soon occupy Bordeaux and various towns and fortresses throughout the region. In response, Gascon officials, burghers from Bordeaux, sailed to London and begged King Henry VI for help. The king then, in turn, seized an opportunity to claim a little bit of France back for the English, which would enhance his reputation. And who should step onto the stage at this very moment? Lord John Talbot. This man who had grown old with the 100 Years' War, with his grey hair. Some say he was 70 years of age at this time. That makes him about the same age as me. So October 17th, 1452, with Talbot arriving with 3,000 English troops into Bordeaux, the French are simply ejected, and the surrounding towns and garrisons are reclaimed for Gascony. Talbot's army is being quite successful, and in fact it was reinforced by some extra troops from England, brought down by Lord Talbot's son, the Lord Lille, and also, of course, with Gascon troops. They could have numbered anything up to 6,000 men. And it's quite interesting because the Gascons, they regarded the English as liberators and the French as conquerors. So you might think that the 100 Years' War is about to continue, but the French hadn't given up on Gascony. As part of Charles VII's reform, he had permanent taxation, standing companies of soldiers, and a professional artillery train. This was war on a state level. It was actually quite something. And the artillery train was led by Jean Bureau. He'd actually begun his career as an English soldier, but had then transferred his allegiance back to France. He truly was a master of artillery. He was brilliant. In fact, he was possibly Europe's most advanced artillery commander. So the King of France, Charles VII, didn't rush to conquer Gascony. He took his time to amass an enormous army to face Talbot. The French really were quite scared of Talbot. But in fact, the French didn't raise one massive army. They raised 4 armies. And by middle of the summer, 1453, they advanced on Bordeaux. Now, the first army came from the southeast, the middle army from the east, and the other from the northeast. The king held the 4th army in reserve. The problem France had was if one of their armies attacked the English, they themselves would be outnumbered. But if they can combine their armies as they approach, then they will greatly outnumber the English Gascon army. So the Middle French army, commanded by Jean Bureau, remember the great artilleryman, he arrives at Castillon in the middle of July. Now, Castillon itself is a small walled town. It's only about 30 miles east of Bordeaux as the crow flies. Now, Talbot didn't react to this army. He waited. He bade his time. He wanted it to come closer so he could then strike. Now, the French don't lay siege to Castillon, not in the way you would think. They simply contain it because Jean Bureau, this great artillery commander, wants to build a fortified camp, but he doesn't want to build it in between Bordeaux and Castillon because he could be trapped in Castillon. They've got guns, they've got a garrison. So he builds it to the north of Castillon, about 2,000 yards away, out of gunnery range, but it's about 200 yards from the priory of Saint-Florent. He then sends 1,000 archers to garrison the building there. Interestingly, longbowmen, OMG, the French have longbowmen. He then sends 1,000 mounted troops to the north into the woods in the high ground. These are Breton troops. These are there as a reserve. He then puts to work 700 pioneers who work for 4 days and nights. Solid. They dig a ditch on 3 sides, the fourth side of the artillery park being protected by the river Lidoire. They build a palisade with ramparts so that the troops can stand on top. Gun ports. So 4 days and nights they slave away, 13th to the 16th of July. The area of this artillery park covered 30 acres, being 700 yards wide by 200 yards deep. It was big enough for 300 cannon to be placed inside, wheel to wheel, and the way they positioned it, it really did have the stamp of the artilleryman's eye, because they were situated where they could enfilade and cross fire on the enemy. It's now that Lord Talbot shows his genius. He mounts a lightning strike, leading an advance party of 1,300 mounted men-at-arms and archers on a forced march 20 miles through the night, but not along the roads, through the woods, and he attacks the priory from behind. The French sentries are looking the other way. They weren't expecting an attack. Many of them were captured or killed while they were still in their beds. Those who managed to flee, to escape, run back to the artillery park, pursued by Sir Thomas Everingham, who rides right up to the palisade and sees what the English are now up against. He reports back to Talbot, and they both agree that they should wait for the main English force to arrive. The main English force, by the way, heavy infantry, and they have guns. However, some of Talbot's scouts report they've seen horses being ridden away from the French artillery park. They believe the French are retreating, but they're wrong. What's happening is they're simply dumping the horses. They're getting rid of them because with the archers running from the priory, there are too many people inside the palisade. So they dump the horses. But the English now believe that the French are on the run. Sir Thomas Everingham doesn't, and he advises Talbot to hang on, but he ignores him. Against the advice of Sir Thomas Everingham, Talbot attacks. He orders his men to dismount and attack on foot. The only Englishman on horse was Lord Talbot himself. He'd mounted his white mare and was not dressed in armour, because he'd sworn that he would not wear armour against the King of France again after he'd been released from captivity, having been captured at the Battle of Patay. And as you can see, I've made a model. So in my model, you can see these palisades. You can see the ramparts all manned by bowmen. And you can see the gun ports. And also where some of the parts, they swivel open because there are field guns within there. I've got one which is actually a multi-barreled gun, which apparently the French had one or two. From reading French accounts, I understand the English actually managed to breach the entrance to the palisade, and Sir Thomas Everingham raised his standard as he led the troops through, but was shot dead immediately. And this is something that I've really enjoyed, is putting the detail in. Although we've got cannons manning every porthole and so on and so forth, every cannon had to have cannonballs, had to have barrels of gunpowder. There should be water on there. So we've got water bowsers, we've got piles of cannonballs, barrels upon barrels of gunpowder, plus all of the other paraphernalia the gunners would have needed. And as you can see from here, they can crossfire. But you imagine what it must have been like. Now, what I couldn't do on the model was I couldn't include all of the black smoke and the sheets of flames coming from all of these guns. It must have been awful. You're charging forward, you can hardly see the stench from the gunpowder. And then as the cannonballs slice through the men next to you, I did read on one of the French accounts that the gunstones, the cannonballs, could slice through 6 men in one shot. The screams, the agony, the roar of the guns, the arrows coming from the battlements as well, whooshing out of the smoke into the men near you. And yet they continue to attack for around about an hour. This shows you the courage of these men. So it must have been horrendous. The trenches have been dug. This is the continuous trench here that goes all the way around. Fortunately, on the day, it was quite dry, apparently. But there are also other trenches and booby traps waiting for the English, who really did charge. The battle was in the balance for over an hour. So it wasn't a case of the English charged and then they were beaten back. Not at all. And it really was one of those battles which could have gone either way until that 1,000 Breton soldiers on the high ground on their horses held in reserve. There must have been a message get to them, or they suddenly see what's happening and they attack the English on the flank, on the side. They literally plough straight into them. The English now being attacked from 2 sides, they break. Talbot tries to rally his troops, tries to face the new threat from the Bretons. He's already been shot through the arm, apparently, when his horse is hit by a cannonball and goes down. He is trapped beneath his horse. Remember, he's got no armour, no helmet, when he is attacked and killed by a French archer called Michel Perunin. His son is also killed at this stage. I don't know whether it's romance or whether it was an account at the time, but Talbot was telling his son to flee, but he didn't. The battle is now lost. The English flee for their lives. The sad thing about this whole thing, not just that Talbot was killed, the fact was his main army was just about coming online in dribs and drabs. If Talbot had have waited, he would have had his own guns to fire onto the French. But hey, that's history, isn't it? The Battle of Castillon was a massive victory for the French, and Castillon wasn't a lucky triumph. It was a victory built on preparation. King Charles VII of France had the discipline to wait and amass 4 separate armies before striking. The French had embraced the future of warfare. By combining Jean Bureau's devastating artillery train with a disciplined defensive trench and palisade system, they turned a traditional charge by Lord John Talbot into a tactical disaster for the English. What happens now is many of the English flee for their lives. Some go to Calais, some back to England. But there's an interesting kind of angle here. Many of the English soldiers had French wives, French families. For all intents and purposes, they had become Gascon, they'd become French, and they stay. And after this 100 Years' War is over, the English have a toehold in Calais, but many an Englishman, many a Welshman, and Scotsman too, who were fighting for the French, never came home. They stayed in France. They swore allegiance to the French king. Many of the citizens of France, especially down in Gascony, are in fact descended from the bowmen of England and Wales. You know, we often call it the 100 Years' War, but in fact it lasted 116 years, and it was never called the 100 Years' War in history, not until the 19th century when Victorian historians tried to make sense of what happened, so they coined the phrase, the 100 Years' War. It wasn't a continuous war anyway, it was a series of campaigns, treaties, rebellions, and uneasy peace, fought by generations who'd inherited a conflict that they never began. At Castillon, something became clear. French artillery was organised, well supplied, and used as a wider strategy, changing the face of the battlefield forever. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, like, share and subscribe. And if you'd like to support our channel further, why not have a look at joining our Patreon community? The link is in the description. Now, before I go any further, quick shout out to some of our Patreon members. We've got Henrietta Fitz, Jacob Mattingly, and Norman Strongman. Hey guys, thanks a million. Bye for now.